Hey.
What up, though?
Okay, wait a minute. That was not what I was expecting.
Aha. And I've got my tea here in
I love
my
it.
my
And you're
my, my car.
sideways.
Yeah.
I love it. So where are you headed
Oh
right now? So
wait.
it's
So
funny.
do I need to turn my phone up the long way? I usually have
I
it
think
sitting in
so.
the cradle. Okay, let me turn it up.
Yeah.
That
Nice.
that help? Okay.
Perfect. How
Yeah.
you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, it's funny. I always open this by asking, tell everybody where you are and give us a look around. You're the first mobile guest. I love it. You're in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful today, isn't it?
It is, man, and that's why I just wanted to get out of the house, man, and just do it from out somewhere. So,
I love it. That's awesome. And what are you drinking? What's in your mug?
there is green tea with. I'm waiting until I pull over, until I get to my chosen destination to sit down and speak with you. But I'm green tea with just a hint of bullet.
Ooh, nice. Very good. I am rocking the coffee straight up.
Ah,
It took me a while to develop the taste for it. You know, I got used to all those sweet lattes and mochas, and every now and then I still like those,
yeah.
but I know it's much healthier to drink it black, so I try.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
Bakari, I
absolutely.
see Bakari has joined us.
Hey.
So while you're driving to your destination, I'm going to go ahead and start, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, man. Let's turn
Fantastic.
it up.
So Trey, I'm always interested. Tell us about your first experience with tap, either as a viewer or a student or a performer.
Um, the first things that I remember is maybe like some old Fred Astaire movies. You know, late night with my grandmother when I was very little, when I was very small. Um, 5 or 6. Um, that's the first thing that I remembered. She was very much into those movies. She was, those were movies that were out when she was young. So um, she was very much into the Fred Astaire, Ginger, all of the very various partners, but especially Ginger Rogers. So she would watch those movies whenever they came on, and I would spend a lot of time with her. My dad was a musician. He was still working a lot when I was young. So on weekends, the band would be out, touring or doing whatever. My mom would go see them. I'd be spending, time with my grandmother. Um, so I spent a lot of time with her, and we watched a lot of those movies. Just late night, Channel 7, ABC late movie or whatever, Channel 9, the WGN in Chicago. So just catch the late movie and watch the, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers flicks with my grandmother. That's the first things that's the first tap that I remember seeing. Um, and I took my first class when I was like 8, just before my 8th birthday. Um, so shortly there, within a couple of years after those first remembrances of watching those flicks with my grandmother, was when I first started.
Very good. Um, so growing up, who were your primary teachers? And I'm going to ask a little more about this later, but it's up to you if you want to talk about it now or then. You
This
are
is the
part of
water,
such
by the
a
way. This one's water. I'm still
I like that
driving.
you
This one's
clarified
water.
that. So I love that you are part of such a proud Chicago tradition, tap dance wise, as far as where you were educated. So could you tell everybody out there a little bit about your primary teachers, where you studied, and if you happen to know, hey, Lisa Latouche's here and says hi.
Lisa, what
Um,
up, though?
and if you happen to know, if you know your teachers' teachers, one of the things I'm so interested through all these interviews is trying to create a sense of lineage and a sense of where people are coming from and who their teachers were and their teachers' teachers.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Well, I grew up at a studio in Chicago on the South Side called Mayfair Academy of Fine Arts. It was started by a gentleman by the name of Tommy Sutton,
Hmm.
um, one of Chicago's top legends, along with guys like Skip Cunningham and Sammy Dyer, who started the oldest school in Chicago. Um, but yeah, so Tommy Sutton started Mayfair Academy. I started there around the age of, like I said, just around the age of 8. I had, well, the story goes that my parents tried to keep me in structured activities. I was a very energetic kid, had a lot of, pent up energy, and so I was a pretty good kid, but I was mischievous, not bad, but mischievous. I would get into stuff if I didn't have something to do. So they would always try to find these structured activities for me. I was always in a creative writing class or a drama class or
Mm.
some type of a sport or something. Um, Piano lessons. But the things they came to find out over time, the things that required me to sit still didn't work as well. So like when I could go to a acting class or a drama class and be silly and act like an animal or do whatever, the various exercises they came up with in those classes. And when I could go to a dance class and move around, that was good. When I was sitting in this lady's living room trying to learn piano, it was not so much. you know? So, they quickly realized that they had to keep me moving. Um, yeah, man, my aunt was a dancer, my father's younger sister, and
Wow.
not a tap dancer, but a dancer. And
Yeah.
she, uh, as we were approaching, like I said, my 8th birthday, she let my parents know that a girlfriend of hers was starting a new all boys class at Mayfair,
Huh.
and they knew my father had been a musician. I had rhythm. I played congas and things like that since I was you know 4, 5, 6 years old. So they knew I had rhythm. So he was like, well, why don't y'all try this? And they took me, and it was one of those things, and it took. It was a fit. I immediately liked it. I was immediately good at the basics, the flapping and shuffling and all of those things. Like I remember the very first thing I
We lost you for about literally 3 seconds, but I think you're back. We'll see.
hello.
I think you're here now, and I see Kalina Miller has
Yeah,
just
I'm
popped
still
in.
here. Did I lose you?
There you. Now you're here. Now I hear you clearly.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So where'd you lose me? Where was I when?
I lost you. I think you were starting to talk about how it started to take, and you started finding that it was something that you had a natural affinity for, that you kind of got it right away.
Yeah. It was like the very first thing I learned. The day
Mm.
one um, was exercise number one by Tommy Sutton. So
Oh,
I
that's cool.
was literally flapping and shuffling, and I was literally flapping and shuffling and flap
Mm.
heeling and all those things on day one.
That's
Like I
awesome.
never did the the little kids class where you bend over to the side and dig and almost touch your toe. I never did that.
Yep.
So I skipped all of that. When shuffle,
Mm.
stamp, shuffle, things like I was right day one. I was 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
That's cool.
for lap. So like those things, the basics came easy. and I enjoyed it, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I was not at all mad at being the only little boy in a room full of little girls and leotards and tights. I was not at all angry at that. I discovered that I thought girls were cute at a very early age. So I looked around the room and was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I enjoy what we're doing, and I get all this eye candy too. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. Yeah, man. That's and
I love it.
yeah, it's just over time. Over time, over time it got harder. Obviously, I wasn't great at every step I learned the first time I saw it.
Mhm.
That is
I can
especially
relate
not
to
the
that.
case today. But I definitely, man, I just enjoyed it. You get that sense of satisfaction when you get a step that's hard, and when you finally, um,
Yeah.
and I always got a big rush out of that. And so as it got harder, I enjoyed it more.
Hmm.
Um, as it got more
So
challenging, I enjoyed it more. So yeah.
I love it. It becomes kind of a virtuous circle, right? Because you find you're a little bit good at it, so you do it more, and because you do it more, you get better, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's one of the things that a lot of us find, right, when we're young. Those of us who become professional dancers, it's that kind of circle that we get caught up in, and you go, oh, you wake up one day and realize you're doing some pretty cool stuff. Um, is there anything that a mentor said to you while you were growing up that has really
Mm-hmm.
stuck with you all these years that you still hear in the back of your head when you go out and dance?
Couple things, man. But the biggest one, and I believe she credits this. This came from Diane. It was passed on to me from Diane.
Nice.
My top mom. Everybody knows it was Aunt Diane. Um, she once passed this on to me, and I believe she said she got it from Bunny, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm,
But it was stay in your own bag.
yeah.
You know, be yourself essentially. Go out there and do you. You if you go out there and try to imitate somebody else, you at the end of the day, no matter how good you are, you're still going to be a pale imitation of them.
Yeah.
But if you go out there and do you and just sit in what you are really good at and what naturally comes from you, nobody can do
Mm.
that better than you. So
It's interesting you would say that. I feel like having watched you as a tap dancer, that is definitely something I would say I see in your work. Yeah, you have such a distinctive. I know I talked about this a little bit when I was teasing today online, and also when I was writing my questions. But I think one of the things that you're known for, and like when other, like the tap dancers in my company, we talk, of course, and we talk about different tap dancers we've seen and what we like. And yours is a name that comes up frequently. And one of the things we always talk about is that you have a very specific feel. You have pockets for miles, yeah? And it is very distinctive. I would say, like, I don't know that I see anybody else kind of in the tap world right now who tap dances exactly, the way that you do. I feel like there's certain people you see, oh, they have a lot of stylization from this person or that. But when I think about you, there's a very specific aesthetic, right? You move
mm.
specifically, you have a specific tone, your feel is like that face I just made, that's your feel. So yeah, that does not surprise
I
me
got
one
the
bit
stank
that
face
that
feel,
is,
huh? Okay.
yeah,
All
man.
right. I'm not mad
So
at
I'm
that.
not surprised that that is the quote that is stuck with you, because you clearly, I would say I see that in your work. What is it, there's so many different things that we can love about tap dance. What is it that, when you had that realization, like, oh, this is my life now, what is it that, like, what part of tap dance did you really fall in love with the most, or what really kind of made it happen for you?
Um, you know what? I think. honestly, I think it was like when I got into teaching professionally, I still wasn't really. I was still basically just doing um, what I learned at Mayfair, and not
Mm-hmm.
really. I was putting my own spin on it a little bit, but it was essentially what I had learned there, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
rearranged, if you will. Um, just kind of taken apart like Lego blocks and just kind of put back together, maybe in different orders. Um, and I added a little bit of my style to it, my personal take on it. But up until I did CHRP Rhythm World, well, was just Chicago Human Rhythm Project at the time. They hadn't renamed redubbed the festival Rhythm World yet. It was '95, which I believe is like their third year, something like that. Um, and I was, I was 2 years or so removed from college, and I was home. I was teaching a few classes at Mayfair. It was my side gig. I was working. I was working as when I came home from college. I worked for like the first 2, 3 years as a bike messenger downtown, and then I transitioned from bike messenger to foot courier for a company called Airborne Express, which is, if you're familiar with all these various courier services, Airborne, Pure Later, it's like FedEx, but it was a smaller company, and eventually they were annexed by Store and merged with some other bigger company. I don't know if it was UPS or whoever bought them out. But so for my first few years out of college, I was doing that, and I
Yes, I see you.
man, this is crazy.
That's all right. Technology, it is the best and the worst, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my original chosen destination, although scenic, is not the best reception area. I guess I don't know. So back. I'm back behind the wheel now.
All right. I mean, it's almost like we have like cash cab going on here or something.
Yeah, right. I love that show, man. I just watched
Oh,
it the
you and
other
me
night.
both. So, I'm going to jump to the next question just so we kind of start clean here. Um, so I'm fascinated by this concept of technique in tap dance because I think that tap dancers tend to define technique more individually than perhaps in other dance forms where they have this very set notion of what technique is. So I'm curious, Trey, what does technique mean to you?
Um, when I talk about technique, I'm, talking about honing, honing clarity, honing speed, honing tone, musicality, um, all of those things. I kind of are encompassed within technique for me. Um, so I don't. There are various techniques out there. I mean, even within our field. I mean, what Sam Weber does and what he's created um, with regard to just a shuffle and all of that and all the different things that he did with his version of the shuffle and how he's taught that to a couple of generations of dancing, and it's the same different than the shuffle that I learned as a
Oh,
kid.
you and me both.
You know what I'm saying? But and I've tried to pick up a little bit of it, but I've never really studied with him extensively. And when we're festivals together, I'm generally, teaching opposite him or something like that, or or trying to recover from my classes when he's teaching.
Yeah.
So, I sat in on a few classes with him over the years, but nothing extensive. So, I mean, I picked up a bit of it and just watching other dancers, I picked up a bit of it, but you know, I don't. That's not my go-to. You know, when I'm doing a shuffle or when I'm or all of the permutations. So you know, I do what I guess would be considered old school or traditional technique.
Very good.
You
Yeah.
know, as far as you know the rudiments and the basics. I have definitely my foundation is still in what I learned at Mayfair all those years ago. Uh, but I have picked up uh, a lot of stylistic tips from footage of Gregory Hines,
Mm.
who's you know probably biggest my biggest tap inspiration. Um, from a style and a philosophical standpoint. You know, there are other dancers, Chuck Green, Jimmy Sly, Honey Coles,
Mm.
who I looked at and I've tried to adopt things from. Um, those are probably Diane.
Mm.
Uh, I learned to. I mean, honestly, at a time when all I really had was what I learned at Mayfair, and um, I was just starting to, I had just seen some footage of Savion, and it was, Brill and Don and I had just kind of got it together, and I was doing, doing those heel slap rhythms, trying to play the taps like a drum,
Mm-hmm.
as Savion was doing, and as Gregory had kind of begun to do before him. Um, and other, but just doing those heel boom, bap, boom, boom, bap, doing that, and then my flaps, all those things I learned at Mayfair. That was really all I had in my bag at that point when we first crossed paths, and we worked on a swing number, Satin Dog.
Yeah.
The three of us, I had a heavy piece in choreographing that, and then for something we did that piece originally, and I began in choreographing that because Tommy Sutton uh, adapts easily to swing,
Mm.
because that's what it's rooted in. And so even though a lot of the exercise rhythms tend to be repetitive or simplistic, um, when you sit them into a swing field, they sit very easily. And so having that in my bag, I had a heavy hand in choreographing this piece that three of us did to Satin Dog.
Mm.
And then Diane came along, and a few months out, like we were doing this show at a spot downtown or just south of downtown called the Cotton Club, and we had put together this show called Goodfellas with a Z at the end. And we were all decked out in these matching suits, different colors, but matching suits. And we had this futuristic opening, and then we went into this whole uh, kind of a gangster storyline that we had concocted and built this little performance around. Um, and then we went into the studio, came out to Mayfair, and rehearsed with us and tweaked the number for something else. I think Lane was doing a program where he was putting established artists together with young artists to choreograph something on them already done, and beef it up and help them with that and dog piece. And she was like, "Oh, I love that," and she just jumped on it and kind of edges to it. And that was, man, I hate those bumps on my shit.
I hate this too.
Right by the ones I'm talking about.
Oh, I do know the ones you're
They solved
talking
them
about.
infections. Yeah, man. So she tweaked that number, man, and that was really kind of where I started to heel swing. Like when I was doing those exercises when I was younger, I was able to put them kind of in the pocket, but she just kind of gave me a whole new understanding. And I wouldn't say even at the time, at that age, I understood it well, but I mean, she kind of began to mold a whole new understanding and of the swing field.
Mm.
And it really started to become like my home. You know, and that was the beginning of something, and it culminated in dancing with all of the other dancers that I got to partner with over the time that I was doing river dance.
Mm.
Van Porter, Parrish Man, Robert Reed came out for a hot minute. Derek came out for a hot minute. Tariq Winston, who choreographed the trade taps, the tap portions of the trade taps, number that is so famous from river dance. You know, and others who I'm forgetting to mention right now. Walter Freeman, and, you know, a few others that I'm forgetting to mention now. Dexter Jones, who was a tap captain on Black and Blue.
Mm.
Yeah, man. So I've got to work with all of these cats over the course of the Riverdance tour, and they kind of just working with all of those cats and spending so much time practicing. Because we did a number that was essentially 7 minutes in the show, and then a reprise at the end. And other than that, you know, I had to be in the theater a half hour call. I had and the first half of the show is about an hour, so you know I had all that time. It didn't take me that long to get into makeup and costume and put my tap mics on. So I had essentially the first hour of the show, or the first hour that I arrived in the theater, to practicing.
Wow.
And so, you know, sometimes that would be us circling up. A lot of times that would just be me in the rehearsal studio or on a board by myself. And by the time 3 years of touring with Riverdance and working with all these different dancers was over, I came home in 2000. I was a completely different dancer.
Yeah. Yeah, chops.
Than the captain who left. Yeah, man. So
That sounds like such a great
Diane,
opportunity.
it all started with Diane, man, and just kind of opening my eyes to swing.
I think she's one of those figures that a lot of people could say, you know, she really played such a significant role in their development. She has touched so many lives in the tap community. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, no question.
So I'm wondering, you know, I asked this question because when I was first writing these questions 3 months ago, I was trying to think about what kind of people might be listening to this show or watching it and what they might want to hear or need to hear. And one of the things I wanted to address was overcoming injuries as dancers, because I think it's an experience that almost all of us have had, especially if we're over the age of, you know, something.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask, so I've been asking every dancer, you know, have you had to deal with a major injury of any kind? And if so, how did you handle it? What did you do?
Well, absolutely. I tore my left ACL back in 2009, I want to say. Yeah, 2009. Like February, March 2009, I tore it. I got my surgery towards the end of May that year. And I was sidelined. I couldn't dance at all for 6, 8 months. And then when I started to come back, it was still a good year and a half before I felt like myself again.
Yeah.
And you know, and depending on, you know, as you're also getting older, man. Now, you know, your weight fluctuates a little or something like that. You know, you just my knees, I still feel it, and I mean my ACL's fine, but there was also meniscal damage, and it's not a high blood flow area, so I have basically two choices. If it's not a complete tear, if it's a slight tear and a little fraying, they'll just trim the frayed edges as well as it will on its own. If it's a complete tear, then they'll try and, do the snip, just kind of, but there's, a couple of millimeters of play there where they're not. And at this point, it's just become a pain tolerance thing. Um, I just wear a sleeve whenever I dance. Whenever I know I'm going to be dancing for real, like I could teach a beginner class. I could totally shuffle around the room,
Sure.
and not have to do that. But if I know I'm really going to be hitting, then I'm wearing a brace, I'm wearing a sleeve, and it's just a pain tolerance, man. Because every time you get hard, you feel it a little. So it changes as you get older. It changes your style up. You figure out how to work around things. Sometimes just you push through the pain, and sometimes you figure out how to work around it and accomplish what you want to accomplish or say what you want to say. Maybe with some, you can still say it, and you can still say whatever you want to rhythmically, but maybe how you get there. It's like amended based on what you feel, your body.
Thank you for sharing that. I know talking about our injuries, right? It's some real stuff. And
Am I still there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, the connection has been a little less stable for the past 2 minutes, but we're still able to hear you. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing about that. That's really. I think it's important for dancers to hear that you can have an injury and come out on the other end and still dance beautifully, and find new ways to express yourself and work around it. So thank you. I'm interested in the concept of regionality, and I'm wondering, do you think that there is a Chicago style or can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. I'm wondering, do you think that there's a Chicago style or approach to tap dance? Oh, good.
Yeah, I still got you. We didn't get to finish it because of the technology glitches, but it kind of takes me back a little bit to the teachers and grand teachers story, um, because I know that Tommy Sutton, um, just by seeing him dance, not really any particular story he ever told me or any conversation we had, but just by seeing him perform a few times when I was younger, know that he was heavily influenced by Bill Robinson. Uh, and everything I learned at Mayfair was about, being up on the toes. It was definitely derivative of that Bill Robinson style. It was much simplified, but it was definitely a derivative of that. Um,
Shoot, we're losing you again just a little bit, Trey, and I have to tell you this is one of the questions I'm the most interested in hearing your thoughts.
because as I got older and was exposed footage and met a lot of other dancers, that foundation that I got there served me very well. but my choosing style has changed a lot. Yes, I still sit in the swing and I do that, but I hit from a place that is much more. Okay, hold on. Let me get out of there. Can you?
So,
Oh, cool.
with regard to where was I? With that took me back to style. Tommy Sutton's method, his style was clearly derivative or highly influenced by Bill Robinson.
Mm.
So, and I only know that because every time I saw him perform, as he would perform when I was little, he would perform at the recital every year. Like he would direct it, right? Like I wasn't old enough to be in his classes yet, but he would direct the recital and he would perform in it.
Huh.
And then once he got a little bit older and decided to go into semi-retirement, he would still come back to Chicago and help and perform in the recital for a few years as he got older, while until his health wouldn't allow him to anymore. And every time I ever saw him perform, he brought this little chick out with him, had put her in some curls and a Shirley Temple dress, and he put on his W and his blazer, and he would do this whole Bojangles routine. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate it. As I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that cat he was doing Bill, he was doing Bojangles. At the time, I didn't get it as a kid. But as I got older, began to appreciate Shirley Temple and Bojangles more, and began to what I had learned at Mayfair, and began to see how it sat in different music. And then, especially after starting to have those conversations with Diane, it really began to with me how heavily he was influenced by Bill Robinson. So, as far as Chicago style, Bill Roster, who started the school where I came up and created the exercises, many of which I still teach today, was clearly highly influenced by him. So I can't speak to what Jimmy Payne's influences were, or Sammy Dyer, or Skip Cunningham. I've had some conversations with Skip Cunningham, but I know Skip Cunningham did a lot of flash and a lot of tricks. So I'm clearly not a Bill Bojangles disciple, at least in that respect. Maybe I had great respect for him, but stylistically not. So I don't really know if I can say, at least historically, that there's a Chicago style. I know when I talk to cats from other places, and I've had a lot of conversations with people over the years. Derek Grant always comes to mind when he talks about you Chicago cats. Well, y'all got all them steps, but so it's so I don't know. I think the fact that I was influenced by, I'm a big fan of Honey Coles. I'm a fan of Chuck Green, and they're opposite ends of the spectrum as far as style.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of stuff that's kind of I find myself doing a lot of flips back and forth between these and these very open phrases. The open phrases are clearly coming from Chuck, and then those faster runs and things like that are they're coming from a place that's similar to where Honey was coming from. He was known to have feeding the business for quite some time. And I think, that was it. I felt the kind of a kinship to him too, because, as I talked about when I did Riverdance and I came home, coming home, I was a very different dancer than I was when I left. And I kind of felt like that, like he was a good dancer, but then he felt that sting of that rejection when his two partners, put him out the group, and he went into the shed for a year, and he came out a completely different, he came out a butterfly, came out a completely different cat, and and so I kind of felt a kinship to him in my journey, in that I went away to do Riverdance was kind of like Tap College, and when I came home, I was a completely different dancer. So I don't, and so my style is influenced by all those dancers that I work with, most of which are not from Chicago. My style is also influenced heavily by the music that I grew up listening to. A lot of that does come from Chicago. A lot of that R&B, and a lot of those jazz artists do have roots in Chicago. A lot of that funk and R&B that I was listening to in the 70s and the 80s, that heavily influences my feel now. That could be said to be, originated in Chicago, a lot of it. Especially my dad's music. My dad, being a musician and having a band whose music, I grew up listening to. So, yeah, man, I mean, in that respect, I think the musicality of my style comes from Chicago, and it's based in things that originated in Chicago. But the technical aspects of it, the steps and ideas that I've picked up over the years, not so much. So, is there a Chicago style? Some people will tell you yes, some people will tell you no.
I love it.
I really could speak to
so I'm just going to warn you, we'll do one question. We have about 6 minutes, and then we're going to log off and log right back in to finish out the last 15 or so minutes.
Like
Instagram, has
Chicago artists.
Don't worry about it.
Of course, I have a lot of other.
That's just the nature of technology, right? Is it is unpredictable.
A big portion of my musicality comes from
would you mind tell us? I remember. Chicago Tap Theater and Mad Rhythm started, I think, within about 6 months of each other. Because I remember talking about like, hey, we're both starting a company, huh? That's crazy. Like, what are we thinking? This is going to take a lot of work and all that, but we both felt it was important, right? Can you talk a little bit about the creation period of Mad Rhythms and what that was like?
I know you're not getting in all of it. Mad Rhythms was and still is Brill's baby. It was Brill Barrett's baby. He was cultivating, he planted that seed and was cultivating it for a couple of years before I actually got heavily involved. We did Riverdance. We danced together as Stepping Out. We did Riverdance together for a while. Then he left Riverdance after about 6 months. I stayed on for like 3 years straight. And he came back out for like the last 4 to 6 months of my run, or for 4 of the last 6 months of my run. So we were together kind of at the beginning of it, and then again for a little bit of the end of it. But then he left, and I was still out there for a couple of more months. And he called me from the road. He called me from home and said that he had this idea. He wanted to start this company. He had been doing these classes on Sundays. Started off as just like an all boys thing. He was trying to do it for the boys at Sammy Dyer and help help these young brothers on the street, trying to give them something else to do. And some of the boys that are already enrolled at Sammy Dyer that wanted to get some more experience with him and with Tap. And so he was doing this thing for a minute on Sundays. Jamani was involved, and then towards the end of it, I think Star and Jaboan were a part of it. And so he was doing that for a while, and then he called me and asked me, you know, when you come home, I know
Yes.
you're coming home in a few months. Would you help me with it? And I was like, absolutely, yeah, definitely. We had some things early on, and we had hashed them out. We were on really good terms
Yeah.
at that point in time, and so it was like, absolutely, man, I would love to help you with that. And I got home, and or right before I got home, he called me again, and he said he had spoken to I don't know if you remember this name, Ife, but she used to be over the South Shore Cultural Center
Love
for a
it.
while, and he had spoken with her, and she had agreed to give us some space to practice and let us do the show in the auditorium there. And so he called me, man, and I think this was because it was January of '01 or December of '01, December of 2000. And we had our first rehearsal January of '01. We did a show in February. We rehearsed those kids for 1 month, just over a month into the show. Our first show. And then we rehearsed them for another 5 or 6 months, and we did another show in October. And then that was the beginning of the October being the once a year performance. But the first year we actually did 2 shows, a February and an October.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, man, it was his idea. It was his concept. I helped him name it. He came up with Mad Rhythm. He came up with a few different things, and then he came up with Mad Rhythms, but he didn't have the acronym. And I gave him the acronym. I gave him the Making a Difference Dancing Rhythms, because he was like, you know, Mad was one of the that beat is mad fresh. You know, it was at the time we were coming up. You know, in the late '90s, early 2000s, Mad was a big slang thing. You know, so. That beat was mad fresh. That movie was mad. That movie was mad cool. That girl's mad. That girl is, you know, she's mad fine.
A ridiculous amount of talent.
So it was Mad Rhythms, and but Making a Difference Dancing Rhythms is the acronym that we came up with for that. And you know, and Mad Rhythms, man, was an amazing experience. Teaching those, I keep calling them kids. They're all grown now. Star and Damani and Lee Howard and oh my God, Donetta Jackson. Oh man, I mean, they're all just amazing. You know what I'm saying? Nico Rubio. My
Trey, I'm going to stop it right here because Instagram's about to cut us off. It is giving me a countdown. It says 12 seconds. So I'll see you in like 1 minute, 30 seconds to 1 minute. I'll be right back. Trey, thank you so much. I love this. See you in a hot second.
It's just...
Hello, Mark Yonley back with part 2 of our interview with Martin Trey Dumas III. It has been an amazing interview. I want to thank Trey, even though he's not back yet. I want to just say I love a lot of the things he's telling me about, even for somebody who's been in the Chicago community for about 21 years now. It's so great to hear his insights, and you know, I feel like I'm learning something new about tap history, but specifically Chicago tap history on a daily basis. And I'm so thankful for Trey and Brill and Star and the other tap dancers here in Chicago who have shared their time with me. Bakari, right? Trey was talking about Nico and his alien approach. Is that not the truth? I agree. I'm also a huge fan of Nico and his beautiful, beautiful approach to style. I think he really does have such a unique and beautiful approach to this dance form. He's one of those people, if I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see that he's posted something, he is for sure one of the people I will stop. Also, Bakari, while you're here, I want to give a shout out to your Friday concerts that you've been doing. I have been working on the Fridays. I have not gotten to see it yet, but I'm planning on hopefully being there for the next one. I recommend everybody, if you haven't checked them out yet, please do. Bakari is producing concerts I think, weekly, and hiring some of the most amazing tap dancers working right now to appear in them. Trey's up next. Awesome. Bakari, would you mind commenting with maybe either a link for information or a website people can go to find out more? Because I definitely want to recommend that people check it out. And then meanwhile, let's see. I'm going to get Trey on review. I am waiting. Looks like he is here. It'll take maybe about 10 seconds for him to pop up. So Freedom Tap Studios NYC. Everybody check that out if you're looking for a cool concert. Hey, Andrew Niemer, good to see you. Very good. That's on Instagram. Thank you, Bakari. Hey, Trey.
What up, though?
You know, it's so funny. I remember a lot of us, all of Chicago Tap Theater went to one of those early concerts at the South Shore Cultural Center. And I remember for like a year after seeing that concert, we would never greet each other without saying, "What's the deal, pickle?" Which we thought was so amazing. It was so funny. So
I'm still here.
So tell me this. You were a part of what I consider to be one of the most important and iconic productions in the past 20 years in the tap community, Imagine Tap. I remember seeing that show so vividly. Would you talk a little bit about the experience being in that show? Because I know that it seems like that show was really a transformative experience for a lot of tap dancers.
Oh, yeah. I had done, as I was alluded earlier, I had done river dance, and those last 2 months or so, when I came back from the European tour, it was back in the States, and I was paired up with Aaron Tulsa, and yeah. So the funny thing is, like, when I came in, they told me that I was supposed to train. Aaron had already been doing the show for a while, and he had been dancing the lead with that company. I was coming from the European company dancing the lead, and they told me that we were going to split it. He was going to do it some days, and I was going to do it some days. But they wanted me to train him and teach him, because there have been some tweaks to the number made by the overall dance captain. And he had come out to the European company and showed them to us first. So he wanted me to teach these amendments to the number to Aaron and the other cat that we were dancing with at the time. So when I came in the rehearsal, the first time we met was at rehearsal, and it was kind of like they had set us up to bump heads. They'd set us up to, like, oh no, he's the lead, but you're gonna come in here and train. I'm the lead, but you're gonna come in here and train me, and I think it was just that I walked into the room and there was a chilled out person anyway. So, like,
So wait, I'm so sorry, Trey. There we go. Yeah, we lost you for literally just 5 seconds. If you can go back to, you walked in the room.
Yeah, and I'm generally a chilled out person anyway.
Yeah, so you are.
I just tried to be as chilled out and as humble as I could. Like, I know you're the lead here. You've been doing this for a while. I've been doing the show longer, but you've been holding this company down. So I'm not trying to step on your toes. I'm just trying to show you what they wanted me to show you. If I, do the lead sometimes, that's fine. It's not really that much of a big pay, it's not that much of a big pay jump for the person doing the lead. You just gotta, throw these splits and do some extra tricks and yada, yada, yada. And, like, for the minimal amount of money that they're gonna add to my check to do this a number of times a week, I don't really care at this point. I've been doing this show for 3 years, so this is my last. I'm about to be going. I'm leaving. This is my last couple of months, man. I'm just filling in, helping out here. And when I came at him like that, not necessarily said those words to him, but that was my whole demeanor throughout the rehearsal. And by the end of the rehearsal, he was completely disarmed, and we were both just vibing, and we ended up getting really close and becoming really good friends.
Cool.
And it was toward the end of that run that he told me that he and Derek were close, and they were thinking about doing something or trying to do something down the line, and asked me what I'd be interested in being a part of. And this was years before Imagine Tap. Imagine Tap finally came to fruition in 2006.
I believe so, yeah.
I believe these conversations happened in 2000.
Wow.
So that's how long those ideas and the seed was in development before the money and the ability to actually make it all happen came about. So yeah, the first conversations I had with Aaron about Imagine Tap were in 2000, and then late 2005, he and Derek called us up, me and Brill, and they told us that it was happening, and they were going to be able to do it, and they were going to be debuting it at the downtown at the Harris, and that they wanted us to be a part of it. They couldn't do that without some Chicago dancers, and at the time they felt like what we were developing with Mad Rhythms, we were kind of holding down the Chicago situation at that moment in time. So they wanted us to be a part of it, and like I said, I had talks with Aaron about that idea years prior. So it was just all of that coming to fruition, and man, when I heard about the lineup, who all was going to be in it, I was like, are you serious? Like, I mean, these are my quote unquote peers. By that point in time, we had met and were friends for the most part. But I did then, and I still have enormous admiration and respect for Derek and for Jason and for Delisha and for Chloe and for they were younger than me at the time, but even I had taught them at Chicago Human Rhythm Project, but Michelle Dorrance, and Jared Grimes, and I think my first Imagine Tap was my first meeting and my first experience with Jay Jan, so I met him there. But all of the kids that were in the chorus when we were in the line. I had experience with most of them, teaching at festivals and seeing them dance with their various companies and things like that, or dancing as soloists. And then the soloists. I mean, the only one that I didn't know beforehand was Ray Hessler. But the rest of the dancers in the show, I was very familiar with, and I was a huge admirer of all of them. So it was just like, that for me, like I had done Riverdance, I had traveled all over the world, I had gotten to have a certain amount of notoriety within the community. But that for me, Imagine Tap for me was like that ultimate validation. Like you really belong with these people, because at that point in time, it was still, and I think that experience really kind of, like I said, it was the ultimate validation. It kind of really helped me to finally become really comfortable in my own skin and really begin to live that, what I was talking about with Diane earlier, and that she got from Bunny, which was stay in your own bag. Like, I was learning a lot, and I was picking steps from these cats. But the things that didn't fit me, I didn't have as much trouble not hanging on to them. The things that fit me, I was able to mold them and make them my own, and you know, and the things that didn't fit, I was able to put aside without as much trepidation, because I was really at that. It was like, okay, you are really these people who you admire so much consider you a peer. If you didn't know it, now it's apparent, it's readily apparent. They consider you a peer. So, you know, so that really went a great distance in helping me finally become really comfortable in my own skin and really start living, stay in your own bag
Mm.
as a dancer.
Wow. Trey, thanks for sharing that. That was beautiful. So it's not, I mean, you know, it's interesting. Like I say, so many people have told me that were involved in that it was transformational, and it sounds like it was transformational for you too.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I've been lucky enough, I interviewed Derek for Tea on Tap also, and he and I had talked about just what an amazing cast of heavy hitters. I mean, every single person of that cast are people that I also look up to, including you, of course. So I'm so glad that you had that experience. So I want to talk real quick about your company that you had for a while, and I'm going to tell you. Here's the thing. I generally think I'm a relatively smart dude, and yet twice, specifically with you, there are things that have blown my mind. One time, you and I were in a show together, and they announced you, and they said, coming up next is Martin Dumas the Third. And I looked at you, and I was like, why didn't they call you Trey? And you were like, well, the third is why people call me Trey. And I was like, oh, like, how did I not? I'd known you for like 10 years at that point, and I'd never put together that the Trey was the, anyway, so that was one. Two, I'm typing out my questions, right? And I'm typing out just listen, and then I'm looking at the people in the company, and I'm like, because I'm looking at the capitalizations in Just Listen,
Right.
and I'm like, I've known of that company. I've seen your company for however many years, and I never put together that the name of the company was based on the names of the people in the company. So Trey, twice I have been completely outwitted by you. So I want to thank you for that. So tell everybody real quick, talk about your company and kind of the idea behind it, and then tell everybody about the people that were in it, because talk about another group of heavy hitters. You had some of my favorite people in that company.
Well, it was the name of the company was Just Listen. If you look at the way we wrote it, we took just listen and made it one word. So just JUS apostrophe listen. And if you look, the J, the L, the T, and the N are all capitalized. And that is Jessica Chapuis, Lisa Latouche, Trey, myself, and Nico Rubio.
Yeah.
So just Lisa, Trey, and Nico, just listen.
And what was talk about the concept behind the company, because I loved your work.
Well, you know what, man, honestly, it was just born out of the need to the desire to perform, and the need to get all of these choreographic ideas that were in my head out, and the fact that I was no longer a part of Mad Rhythms at that point. In 2007, Brill and I had a little bit of a falling out. Long since passed. We're all good.
Yep.
Everything's cool. But Brill and I had a falling out, and as I said earlier, you know, we we started it together. The first rehearsal at South Shore was together. You know, I was there for the first rehearsal of the official company. So we co-founded Mad Rhythms. But as I said, he planted that seed and you know, and fed it for a couple of years before I got involved at Sammy Dyer. So Mad Rhythms was his baby. So when we fell out, you know, there was no choice but for me to go. There was no way that I couldn't. It was not going to be a comfortable situation for me to stay on, and I was not willing to compromise on what we had fallen out over at the time. and neither was he. And at some point, all good things come to an end at some point. But as I said, that long since passed. He and I are very good friends, very good. We're back to being brothers in a great place now. Um, but at that time, we were separated, and I was kind of just out on my own for a minute, and it was like, okay, you're out here on your own again. You've been for the last six plus years. You've had these amazing young people that you and he hand chose together, hand picked to put all of these choreographic ideas that you have in your head. You've had these kids to train and to put these ideas on. You don't have anybody now. So it was kind of just born out of that need and that necessity and that desire. I started working with some kids at a studio out in Indiana, and I started putting a piece on them. It was supposed to be for a competition. And I quickly realized that what I was giving them was beyond their capacity at that point in time. And rather than compromise that vision, I decided to start over and put something else on them and take that vision and pull some dancers together and make that vision happen. And that vision turned out to be the piece, What Time Is It? And those dancers turned out to be Jessica Supreme, Lisa Latif, and Nico Rubio.
Yeah.
And so it was originally, it was just me saying I wanted to dance again. I wanted to dance in an ensemble again. I wanted to put out choreography again. And John Schmitz. I had venues like Dance Chicago and other things that still wanted to put me on stage and put my work on stage. So I just needed to pull together the dancers to do it. Nico had left Mad Rhythm shortly after myself. Lisa the same. Jessica had a brief flirtation with Mad Rhythms, but she was dancing with BAM with CHRP's resident company, which was called BAM at the time. And so, she had time to pull away from that. She was still in it, but she had time to rehearse with us on Sundays, which is when we called it together, because that was our normal rehearsal day with Mad Rhythm. So I just was like, okay, let's just do that with this group too. But I just wanted it to be a smaller group. I wanted it to be all day. I didn't want to try and recreate Mad Rhythm. I didn't want it to be formal, and at least originally, I didn't want it to be formal and incorporated and have a school on the side and a youth and an outreach contingent. I just wanted to put choreography on some professional caliber dancers and put it on stage at venues around the city and other places if we could get the gigs. And so that's what Just Listen was originally about. It was just originally me putting that piece out, and then these dancers agreeing to hang together as this little conglomerate for a moment, for that moment in time. And just, so it wasn't, they all had over the years that we were together, and we're not officially broken up. I mean, hell, he and Nico still dance together under the name Just Listen. It's more like Us Issin' now, because there's no J.
Sorry, I did not see that coming. All right.
but he and I still dance together under the name from time to time. And a couple of years ago when Lisa was on Rhythm World, we reunited with her. Yep. Just comes out occasionally, for a shed still. So it's it's not completely defunct. It's still there. It's just kind of in hibernation for the moment.
Very good. Well, I was going to say, if you need somewhere to represent some of your choreography, you and I should talk sometime soon, because I might know a group of dancers that would probably kill to learn a piece of your work. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Let's talk about that.
we'll have a conversation.
Absolutely.
So the last question I wanted to ask before we get to the final two parts of the final two segments of our weekly interview is probably the toughest thing to talk about right now, and it's directly reflective of the times that we're finding ourselves in at this, of course, this terrible tragedy that happened in the history that was kind of encapsulated within that tragedy, but also then the amazing moment that we find ourselves in where we could potentially see transformational change in our society. I mean, I think we are really at a precipice point where we can look back in a year and things will be better than they are now, which fills my heart so much. So one of the things that I think is important is that as tap dancers, what do you think our role and or responsibility is in within the fight to further tear down systemic racism and historic inequality? What role do tap dancers have? And then as a follow-up, what role do you think maybe white tap dancers have? And what are our responsibilities now as white artists within a Black art form to make sure that we really are doing something good? Yeah, that we're doing something that will help the fight, that will help to make the world a better place, that will help to heal old wounds. Just a light question for you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, man, that's but very poignant, especially at this moment in time. I would just say that tap dancers, Black tap dancers, since Bill Robinson, have been at the forefront of change. I mean, he was looked down on by some dancers and some people who felt that that as tap dancers, for whatever reason, as a dancer working with certain people or working in certain circles, he was somehow selling out. But he was the first dancer to go on stage and not have to appear in blackface. That's a major shift if you look at the times that he was living in. He was the first one to do that. He paved that road. He opened that road. So as far back as him, tap dancers have been involved in the struggle. Tap dancers have been involved in the struggle for equality, the struggle for dignity, and to be seen and to be seen with dignity and respect, and treated with dignity and respect. So I look at dancers like Sammy Davis Jr., who when he was when he was a youngster, and when he was younger, when he was working with the Rat Pack, and the kind of example that he was, and the kind of change that came about because people saw him associating with those people and saw those people not only willing but wanting to be associated with him, and wanting to crush stereotypes. I have, say what you will, so people say what they will about rumored mob ties, but I have all the respect in the world for Frank Sinatra, for the way he treated Sammy Davis Jr. So it's I think we have to own this time. We have to own this moment. We cannot let this moment pass. We cannot take the pressure off. We can't let it go back to status quo. We have to keep these protests. We have to keep the pressure on the systems of government in this country until the change truly comes. As dancers, as artists, we try to bring joy. We try to bring awareness to all types of different situations with our art. And so, I mean, that is forever our role, to try and uplift you know, the community, try to uplift people's outlook through our art. But to educate, not to ignore what has happened. You know, if I go on stage, I can't be all sing-songy and happy in this moment. I can perform a number, I can perform a show that engages people and entertains people and inspires people, but I can't ignore what's happening in the world. And that I think is what our responsibility is, to find a way to be inspirational, to find a way to uplift, but without being a distraction from what's going on, but to contribute to the conversation and not distract from it. You know, I think that is what the responsibility is of Black dancers. And for white dancers, I think, you know, the responsibility is to give credit to the Black dancers who were your influences, to contribute through money, through attendance, through standing with, if it's in a protest or if it's in a performance, through standing with the Black dancers, and lending your voice to the struggle, and not being silent, because at this point in time, silence equals complicity. You know, so it's not enough to not be one of the evil voices. You have to be a voice for good.
Yeah.
It's not enough
Trey,
not to be silent, to not be evil. You have to be good. And that's what it comes down to. That I think is the responsibility for white dancers.
Yeah.
Give credit to those that mentored you, especially if they were people of color. Give credit to those that were influences on you, if they were people of color. Support the Black dancers and the Black and Black institutions of dance and art, and stand with your Black brothers and Black and brown brothers and sisters in this struggle, and don't be silent.
Beautiful. Trey, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's, you know, these are such hard conversations everyone is engaging in right now, but the fact that we all realize that we have no choice but to have these conversations. If we want things to change, we have to be willing to have the hard talks, and we have to, and sometimes it's having the hard talk with ourselves, right? And looking at our own practices, especially as a white tap dancer. So thank you for sharing all that. I will say, you know, one thing that I have said before to my students that I think is apropos of what you said, and I'm going to just say this for maybe especially the other white tap dancers that are watching this, is that I sometimes tell my students, I have them wait to put on their tap shoes, right? I'll say, okay, don't put on your tap shoes over there. Come over here. We're going to sit down together. And I want putting on your tap shoes to be a mindful act. And as we put on our shoes together, I say, you know, as you put on your shoes, I want you to think about the people that came before us, the shoulders we're standing on, the people who broke down the barriers, the people who innovated in our art form, and that are allowing you to put these shoes on. And that when you put these shoes on, you are putting on a responsibility to know those people and to honor them by your actions and the way that we dance. And so I just want to maybe encourage, like I say, I know, you know, there's certainly a lot of white tap dancers and white tap teachers watching this. And I think what you said is spot on, that we have an obligation to know the history, but then to make sure we're passing it on, to teach it, to talk about those amazing individuals, talk about the Nicholas brothers and Sammy Davis Jr. and John Bubbles and Bill Robinson, Jimmy Slide and Chuck Green and all those amazing figures. So thank you for those words. I personally found them really inspiring. I appreciate it. So now the fun part. We have 2 segments left. And I'm not going to lie, these tend to be people's favorite parts. These are the parts that everyone says to me, hey, Mark, when I watch, this is the part I always try to make sure I tune in for.
Okay.
First, the 2-minute tap lesson. You have 2 minutes to teach any idea, step, concept. It can be something you teach verbally. It can be something you teach with your feet. It can be anything you want, but it has to be 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. There's a step that over the last few years that I love doing. I love incorporating it into things that I do. It can be really, it can add a really cool rhythmic element to what you're doing, and it just looks amazingly cool. People call them all kinds of things. I've heard recently people call them firecrackers. Basically it's a pull, a shuffle a shuffle while the air that where the foot that you pulled on is in the air with the other foot, and then you landed it. So it's pull, shuffle, land, right? And a lot of people find it difficult because you're trying to pull and shuffle at the same time. So a lot of people you get this boom thing going, right, where the pull and the shuffle are trying to happen simultaneously. And what really needs to happen is you need to pull, shuffle, land. You have to separate those three things. Ba da da da. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Hold on. So, right?
Yeah.
So you have to pull, shuffle, land. Ba da da da. Yaga da da. The only way that works is if you separate the sounds, right? It has to be separated. If you put the pull and the front part of that shuffle together, you get ba da da, ba da da da. You get 3 sounds because you're running the first 2 sounds together. And that's what I find that a lot of people have trouble trying to do that, and then or do permutations of that because they find it so difficult to separate this. This is happening at the same time, and they want to get this done. Da 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 da. You don't want da 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 da, right? Da 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 da. So that is one that I think a lot of people. It's a little bit more advanced, but I like to use it, and I like to. I think the first person that showed me that was Jason Samuels Smith, and then so I've played with it and found ways to incorporate it, and it's a lot of fun. I find incorporating that step into combinations and not just doing it on its own. Like doing it on its own is impressive, but when you can incorporate it into a combination where something comes before it and it happens, and then something comes and it's just smoothly, in the middle of it, then you really got something. So
nice. Thank you. I love it. All right, it is time for rapid riffs. These are 10 questions. They're going to come at you fast. Some of these questions are not easy. I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this, I think this is the 15th or 16th interview. Some people get stuck on some of these. So here we go. Number 1, what type of tap shoes do you wear?
I have, over the years, I've worn a lot of different shoes, K360s, GS1s by Matt Schroeder out of the Dancing Fair in Minnesota. My Spider-Mans that everybody knows about, or most people know about, are custom GS1s. The last couple years, I've found myself getting really comfortable in the J. Sam shoe. Initially, when I first tried them out, I felt that they were too heavy. They were, because I was used to the GS1 and the K360, and they're very similar in weight and feel. And the block is just, it's got more padding on the inside of it. It's got a slightly thicker sole, not much, but slightly thicker. And then the front tap is huge. Like it comes further back into the ball of the foot than any other tap I've ever worn before, and it's thick too. So it's a particularly heavy shoe when you compare it against the others. I haven't had an opportunity to wear the silk dances. I had one pair of them once a few years back when Derek was still developing the design, so they were kind of a prototype. But I never got a pair of those since he finalized them, since he and Aaron
Mm.
finalized them. So I've been really comfortable in the J Sams over the last few years. As I got used to wearing them. I used to like to just teach in them, especially when I was doing basic stuff, because I felt like it was heavy. It was almost like dancing in ankle weights.
Yeah.
When I'm doing all those basic rudiments to wear a shoe that was heavier, you know.
Mm.
But then I found myself teaching so many basic classes that I got used to them, and I just started dancing in them all the time.
Mm. 2, taps, tight or just a little bit loose? Uh-oh.
Oh,
Just a
tight.
little bit of
Definitely
technical.
tight.
Oh, there you are. You are back.
Yeah, definitely tight.
Nice.
Definitely tight.
3, favorite song to tap dance to. You get one song. What is it? I know,
Man,
it's hard.
that's hard. I only get one song.
Yep.
It's got to be it's got to be a waltz, and it's got to be by Miles Davis. So pick me a waltz by Miles Davis, and we're good.
Love it. Someday My Prince Will Come.
Someday my prince. Oh, no, all blues.
Ah, yeah.
All blues.
Gorgeous.
All blues.
4, favorite composer.
Well, I already kind of previewed that one with Miles Davis.
Yes. You are in 4/4 time. Do you count in 4s or 8s?
I count in 4s. Personally, if I'm teaching a class, it could be either one.
Favorite tap
I
dancer?
do it both ways so they can become. I do it both
Nice.
ways for the comfort of dancers. So.
Yeah, man. Favorite tap dancer to watch who is no longer with us?
Again, that one is tough, but if I have to pick only one, see, I would say what was it? Can I say Gregory Green?
I love it. You just did.
Chuck Hines?
Yes.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Favorite living tap dancer to watch?
I'm going to give you a similar answer, and I'm going to say, oh, that's so tough. Damn, that's tough. Jason Samuels, Edwards.
Jason Samuels Edwards.
Or Dormisha Sumbry Smith.
Mm. Favorite choreographed tap piece that you have either seen or done?
Choreographed that I have done would be What Time Is It? That I've seen. It would be, I can't think of the name of it, but it would be one of the numbers from Imagine Tap. Derek Mann is my favorite choreographer.
Yes, I hear that. What single tap performance that you've seen do you remember the most vividly?
Single tap performance that I've seen?
Yep.
That I remember the most vividly.
Yeah.
Probably my first time seeing the movie Tap. And Gregory at the end. Gregory throughout the movie, but especially at the end.
Yeah. You can go back in time and see any one tap performer or tap performance. What do you see?
It would definitely be Gregory. It would definitely be Gregory. I don't know if it would be one of his, variety shows or if it would be something like Jellies, but it would definitely be Gregory.
Oh. Best venue you've ever played?
Millennium Park.
The
outdoor stage, the Millennium Park is amazing at night. It's incredible.
Second step of the Shim Sham. What count do you start on?
I am definitely of the one.
Very
I'm a
good.
one guy. I'm a one guy. The Leonard, when we did the Doctors of the Dance ceremony, Brill Jamani and I performed at the Doctors of the Dance ceremony in '01 at OCU, and Leonard pulled me aside. He was pulling everybody aside, you know, and he grabbed me by my wrist and I want you to do it like this, and I've done it like that ever since. Plus
Love it.
that once he did it that way, it just made a whole lot more sense to me than the other way anyway. It just musically and rhythmically, it makes more sense to me than the other way.
Very good. So. Favorite Spider-Man?
Favorite Spider-Man?
Are you a Miles Morales guy? Are you Peter Parker?
Oh, come on, man. I grew up with Peter. I love Miles Morales. I love the fact that they got you know, that they went that route with it and gave us a young Latino brother as the new Spidey. And I'm looking forward to. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie Into the Spider-Verse. I'm looking forward to the new Spider-Man game, PS5.
You and me both.
But you know, I grew up like Spider-Man's been my favorite superhero since I was like a kid, and I grew up like Spider-Man is the reason I knew how to read at 5.
Love it.
I was reading comic books like my dad, and the fact that my mother was a school teacher and was adamant that I was reading as a young age. But like comic books, had a big role in making me want to read more as a youngster. So Spider-Man was the reason I was a good reader at 5. So
yes.
So ultimately, I got to be a Parker guy, even though I love the Miles Morales take.
Yeah. So before the final question, I need to just say a few things. I want to thank Leah Koch, our marketing director and tech guru. I want to thank our staff, Molly, Ali, Sarah, the incomparable and beautiful Jennifer Fafianli. I want to thank the interns of Chicago Tap Theater, Ali and Emily. I want to thank all the dancers. Cannot wait until we are hitting the wood together again. I have a feeling it's going to be sooner rather than later, finally. I want to announce the next guest on Thursday. We will have the inimitable Chloe Arnold. I think that's going to be a really fun conversation. I want to remind all of you that Heather Cornell, and I apologize because today we ran late. Heather Cornell is doing a film footage and discussion hour over on Zoom. Right now, you can pop over. You can get the ticket, which is free, at manhattantap.org/Heather Cornell Tap Dance. You can also look on Chicago Tap Theater's Instagram or Facebook feed. We have all the info there. Thank you, Heather, for all the support, kind of helping tell people about Tea on Tap. Finally, please remember we have classes every Wednesday, and I hope I get to see many of you there. I want to remind you, too, that we have book club every Friday. We are currently reading Tapping the Source by Brenda Buffalino. We have her for 2 more weeks, so check it out while you can. Trey, before I let you go, the final question, the final shuffle. When you shuffle off this mortal coil, how do you most want to be remembered as a tap artist?
I just want to be remembered. I want to be remembered. You know, I want dancers to come up, you know, to hear about me from my students, from other dancers who saw me, and just, you know, I don't have to be the greatest. I don't, you know, I'm not looking to be the greatest of all time. I just want to be remembered and said that I was good. I contributed. I left the dance better than I found it. You know, and just that I made a contribution that was worthy of remembrance.
Trey is a fan of yours. I can promise you that for sure is going to happen. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with me. And I can't wait. You and I have a feeling we're going to be having a conversation soon. A, we need to just hang out, but B, we also should be talking some tap soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for joining us on the Tea on Tap. See you all on Thursday. Bye.